Welcome everybody. This is going to be an updated video for an older video I did back in 2016. I think that one was titled Everything You Need to Know About Breastfeeding. I'm pretty sure that's what that one was titled. And I've done probably a few very similar. But I created something for work. It's kind of hard to see, but I found some information that I think I'm kind of like, what's the word I want to use? I can't think of the word, where I put everything down into just short little, condensed it. That's the word. I condensed it. I'm condensing all this information that we get when we're getting ready to have a baby. And I just want to condense, when you think of breastfeeding, I don't want you to think of breastfeeding for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. I want you to think about breastfeeding daily. Like, think about your breastfeeding every single day. Don't think about it in the long haul. Just take it each day as it comes. And so what I'm going to talk about today is going to basically be the first day, the second day, the third through the fifth day, and then kind of like beyond that, probably up till about 4 weeks when your milk is established. But I want you to first, right now, if you're pregnant, just focus on day 1 to 5. Now, the reason I even say those 5 days is because your milk doesn't come in, and I say come in because you already have milk, but it increases, and we always say come in, and so I use that term because people are familiar with that term, but really it's just your milk increases, or comes in, on day 3 to 5. So say you have a C-section, you're more likely to see your milk come in on day 4 or 5. But if it's your first baby, you'll most likely, it's natural delivery, then you should see your milk on about day 3. If it's more than one baby, maybe it's your second or third, you could see it come in a little sooner. But typically around day 3 is when you're going to see your milk come in or increase. And so I want to talk about that first day, that second day, and then when your milk increases, when your milk comes in, and what to do, and how to handle it, and what to expect, and what is normal. That's what I want to talk about today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the first 24 hours. So the first 24 hours, babies are very sleepy. So right after birth, you will do your skin to skin or your magical hour, however your hospital puts it, where you get that one-on-one time with your baby, skin to skin. And that literally means your skin to their skin. And you allow your baby to basically crawl to the breast on their own and latch on their own without really any assistance. If you get to do that, that's great. If you have a hospital that's baby friendly, I don't know why I use that, but it's called baby friendly. If you have a hospital like that, usually they implement that. So you'll get that. But the important thing is, the first hour after birth, the baby is more wakeful. They will tend to be more awake. But they fall asleep, and they sleep a lot on day 1. And on day 1, you have to remember their stomach is the size of a small marble. They are born full. So eating is not the most important thing in the world. Sleeping for you is, because you need to rest. You need to be prepared for day 2. And the baby is going to sleep a lot on day 1. So you're going to sleep while they sleep. Every time they wake, you can do a lot of skin to skin on day 1. Every time they wake, every time they show themselves to be somewhat awake, you practice breastfeeding. You put them to the breast. Every little drop they get is good. Their body knows what to do. It knows the baby's learning. It knows the natural process. So it has fat stores. It stores that milk, every little bit of milk that it gets. So the body stores it and is storing that for the baby, storing the fat. So on day 1, you're only looking for 1 diaper. And Day 2 is 2 diapers. Day 3 is 3 diapers. And by day 6, you're looking for just 6 wet diapers in 24 hours. So on day 1, they're not going to eat more than probably like a quarter to a half a teaspoon the entire day is all they're going to take. And this is partially because they're learning to breastfeed. Second, because they're sleeping a lot. And then they're also born with food. So they're not going to be starving. And they're going to breastfeed and you're going to practice breastfeeding, but you're not going to be overwhelmed and totally concerned on day 1. Your focus on day 1 is resting. Day 2 is when moms tend to get the most frustrated because this is when the baby wakes up. Sometimes it happens at night. A lot of times it happens at night. And babies tend to wake up at this point and they cry a lot. They want to be held a lot. They breastfeed a lot. And moms think, okay, my milk's not there yet. My baby's starving. And then they go grab for a bottle, not realizing that this is normal newborn behavior. So when your baby on day 2 wakes up, they're no longer in this womb, this warm place, dark place, a place where they're hearing your heartbeat and the sound of your voice through your chest. You know, everything is different. It's too bright. It's too dark. It's too loud. It's too, it's just a completely different environment. So a lot of times on day 2, they're going to want to feed often because sucking is comforting to them. It makes them feel secure and content. So it's not necessarily about feeding for them. It's not like they're starving. They just want to suck and they want to be held and they want that skin to skin. And when you put them skin to skin and you hold them, they hear your heartbeat. They hear your voice through your chest. And this is calming to them. So prepare to hold them a lot, to do a lot of skin to skin. And this is where your partner, your spouse, grandmas, aunties, whoever is your support person can be there to hold the baby as well. Just plan on holding the baby a lot on day 2 and feeding a lot on day 2 and letting them feed. The more they breastfeed, they're triggering the hormones that produce milk. You have 2 hormones. The one is the milk producing hormone, and that's prolactin. And then you have oxytocin, which is the love hormone, and that releases milk. So prolactin is very important. You want to get those, you want to keep those hormones up and high. So as they're up and high, it's going to trigger that milk supply and that milk increase. So on day 1, day 2, day 3, you have colostrum. You have your first milk, and then it will change in consistency and in volume by day 3 to 5. Now, on day 1 to 3, you're going to want to breastfeed on both sides, okay? You're going to switch sides. It doesn't matter how long. You're just going to put them to whatever side because you're just trying to trigger hormones and stimulating the breast. And, of course, you're also trying to comfort baby and practice breastfeeding. So that's what I want you to expect on day 1 to 3. You're just going to be doing a lot of practicing. Once your milk comes in, once it increases, your breasts are going to feel very full. They're going to be very hard. They're going to be warm, hot to the touch possibly. There are things you can do. I have some videos about engorgement and so forth. I'm not going to go into that too much. Just knowing that your body is making a ton of milk because it doesn't know how much milk your baby needs, whether you had 1 baby or 2 babies or 3 babies. So it just makes a ton. And through how often you breastfeed and how much the baby takes out, that's what determines how much it's going to make and how often it's going to make it. So when you're breastfeeding a lot, and then when your milk comes in, you're not going to want to empty the breast at that point. You just want the baby to take out what they need, and you want to feed as often as the baby feeds. You're looking for 8 to 12 times a day, not every 2 hours or every 3 hours or you're looking for 8 to 12 feeds a day. It typically turns out to be every hour, 1 to 3 hours. But the reason we say look at 8 to 12 feeds is because every baby's different. Some babies might want to feed every hour for a 5-hour stretch, and then they go 3 or 4 hours, and then they feed every 2 hours. All you need to look for is in a 24-hour period, they are feeding at least 8 times, and most newborns will feed more than that. But at least 8 times ensures that they're getting what they need. That's the amount that they need. And so when your breasts are full, when your milk comes in, you want to breastfeed often on both sides. Okay, this is important because you're just letting the body know how much milk to continue making and how often to make it. Because it knows how much you take out by how much is left there. You can pump a little bit or hand express. There's some different things that you can do to just make the breast feel a little more comfortable. And then, of course, it's also important if you cannot squeeze the dark skin around the nipple, if you cannot pinch your breast, which is the actual breast part, the dark skin around the areola, the dark skin around the nipple, the baby will not be able to latch. So if you cannot pinch that and get that, that's not soft enough, then you have to do something. It can be warm bath, shower. It can be pumping or hand expressing just enough to be able to pinch that so the baby can latch. Because if you try to put the baby to latch on a breast that full, they could end up nipple feeding and not breastfeeding, and then you end up with sore nipples, and we don't want that. So be sure that when that happens, when your milk comes in and when your breasts are full, make sure that you can pinch, make sure it's soft enough in the area where it needs to, which is the areola, the dark skin around the nipple. Make sure that that is supple, soft enough for them to latch. I have videos on those things as well, so you can check those out. Now, after that, on day, usually I want to say within 24 to 48 hours, but usually within a week of having the baby, okay? So by day 6 or 7, you should no longer be feeling that engorged, hard feeling. Your body should adjust. And the only time you will ever feel that full, hard feeling is if you miss a feeding or if the baby sleeps longer than normal. In between feeds, your breast should feel perfectly normal, and they're not going to feel full of milk. You may not even notice a feeling at all. It just feels like how they felt before you were pregnant. That is normal. The only time they should feel fuller is at a time of a feeding. They feel a little fuller. You'll feel the milk there. Then you'll feel your letdown. You'll feel the milk. You'll feel that it's time to feed the baby. But again, it will not be an uncomfortable feeling unless you miss feeds or the baby is sleeping and sleeps longer than he normally does, or longer than he was when he adjusted the milk supply. So say the baby, just for example, say the baby's feeding every 2 hours and he goes 3 hours. Your breast might feel a little fuller and harder because it was adjusting to every 2. Again, all this time period, this 4 weeks, is your baby adjusting your milk supply and establishing it. Think of your breast as a cluster of grapes. Every day that you breastfeed for the first 2 weeks, you're producing a grape, which holds milk. The more you breastfeed, the bigger that cluster of grapes is going to be, which means the more milk you're going to be able to hold in your breast, the higher capacity. So say a baby takes 25 ounces in a total day, your breast can hold 8 ounces, then you're going to be able to fulfill that in just a few feeds. Not that you're only going to feed a few times, but you have the capacity to hold that much milk. If you need, let's say your breast can only hold 2 ounces, then you're going to have to breastfeed a lot more to meet that 25 ounce, and I'm just using that as an example, need. So it's important to breastfeed as often as possible that first 2 weeks while those hormones are being laid, those receptors are being laid, those grapes are being made that hold the milk, because they will not be made again. After that, they're no longer made. At 4 weeks, you're established. That's how much you can hold. That's how much you can see. If you pump it out, you pump your breast, the milk does not mean that's how much you have in there. It just gives you kind of an indication. Say you're able to pump 2 ounces on one side and 1 ounce on the other. That's pretty good. That you probably have about 4 ounces total in your breasts, or maybe 5 even. It depends on the pump and how you're pumping. So never try to gauge your milk supply by a pump. There's other ways to gauge your milk supply, and that's a whole nother story. So I don't want to go a whole lot into that. I will go over some summary tips, but I'm not going to go deep into those things. I just want to get you through those first 5 days. When your milk comes in and your breasts are feeling normal again, at that point, once your breasts are normal, so after the couple days after and the milk has been adjusted, you would then breastfeed on one side for as long as the baby chooses to, until the baby lets go. I don't mean stop sucking, but actually lets go. They're done. You would then burp them and offer them the second side. If they take it, great. If they don't, that's okay. You'll start on that breast the next feed. At that point, a baby can get a full feeding on one breast. So you don't want to be doing 10 minutes on this side, 10 minutes on that side. You want to do as long as possible on one breast until they've emptied that breast, and then offer the second. Now think of it like this. You have your foremilk and your hindmilk. If you're doing 10 minutes here and 10 minutes here, they might be only getting the foremilk. They're not getting any of that fattier milk. But if you have the full, they're emptying that full breast first, they're getting that hind milk too. You can ensure that they're getting that hind milk, so that when you they take the second side, you're not as worried about, the milk, what consistency of milk they're getting. You would always alternate breasts. So wherever you start, you can use like a bracelet or whatever. So say you start on your left or right side, you would switch to that other side. Even if they fed on that side, you would still start on that side. So say you put them on this side, they breastfeed, they empty that breast, you offer them this side, and they suck on it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then they're done. They're asleep, they're finished. You would still start on that breast the next feed, because that second breast that they finish on, that's not going to be as empty. So that you're going to want to start on that breast the next feed. So don't fall into that switching sides thing. Just let the baby be the one to determine that for you. You also don't want to necessarily count how long. Typically anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes is a normal feed. Anything longer than 30 minutes is an issue. A preemie might take longer than that, but typically between 10 and 30 minutes is a good idea of a good feed. The older they get, the quicker they can empty that. Now after 2 weeks, they may have longer stretches of sleep, and that's okay. Again, you're only looking for 8 to 12 feeds, 8 to 10, somewhere in there, in 24 hours. So one thing you could think about is, you want to know if they're getting enough milk, just make sure they're getting 6 diapers in 24 hours by the time they're a week old. You're just looking for 6 diapers in 24 hours. If they're going through that 6 diapers, 2 or 3 of those are stool, they're getting a good supply. Of course, weight gain as well. Then around day 10, we're going to go a little further. Around day 10 to 14 is when they get their first growth spurt. Growth spurts happen every 2 weeks. Their biggest growth spurts are at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, that 3 to 4 month mark, and then a 6 month mark. They act like day 2. The exact way that I described day 2 would be for you is how they are at growth spurts. They want to feed all the time. They're crying a lot. They want to be held all the time. That's normal. That's a growth spurt, and it shouldn't last longer than a day or 2. So, in summary, the first thing you want to remember on the first day, don't tolerate a bad latch, though. That's something I didn't really mention. Make sure the baby latches correctly. Never let them latch wrong. Always take them off the proper way, and then relatch them and continue trying that, because you don't want to damage your nipples and have to deal with sore nipples. In the first 24 hours, offer the breast whenever the baby is awake and interested. Practice, that's all you're doing, but don't worry about the number of times that they feed. Always attempt both breasts, and expect 1 to 3 sticky tar-like stool. By day 2, baby feeds about 8 times in 24 hours, maybe between 15 and 30 minutes of active sucking. They're going to feed a lot more, and you're going to feed them on cue. Whenever they want to feed, you're going to feed them. You do not want to give any bottles at this time. Then day 3 to 21, this is where day 3 comes in. Your milk will increase, and then you're going to be feeding 8 to 10 times a day. They'll sleep longer in between feeds once that thicker milk is, in your volume has come in. And then feeding at one breast is now more common. You will always offer both breasts, but it is more common, and you always want them to empty the first breast first. One last tip that I'm going to say is create a breastfeeding record of how many times the baby feeds, and every time they feed, every time they stool, every time they wet a diaper, every time you change a diaper. Just keep a record of that for your first couple of weeks, just for yourself. You can say, oh yeah, they got 8 feeds. This is how long they fed, and this is how many diapers they went through. And it's just a good thing for you to look back on to make sure that they got enough. So that is it for this video. I have a lot more, so if you have more questions, just check out a lot of my other videos. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can see the other videos that I put out. Hit the notification bell. That will notify you when I do put out a video, because I don't put them out necessarily every week. Although sometimes, like this week, I put out a lot more. I put out like 2 or 3 this week. And when I get the time, I try to put out more. But it all depends on the content and what I have for you. So definitely hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And I will see you guys in my next video.